about just written exam, but I mean, those were those points where life had that exam for you, right? I mean, whenever you had that critical situation where you had to react independently or something like that, perhaps those only were the moments where you pushed yourself, and those only were the moments where you improved yourself. So in a way, exams are actually those moments where we can improve ourselves, right? And hence exams can be considered as an opportunity rather than just a problem. Okay. So I mean, this is the main idea, that exams are not only like not a problem, but they are the chances that life and the other factors give you so that you can perform yourself, right? And the most important thing is between, I mean, the most important difference between successful people and non-successful people is that successful people think big. Okay. I mean, it's not, they don't think that I won't be able to do this, I won't be able to do that. They just think that I have to do this, and whatever requires me to do that, to achieve that, is what I should focus on. So never think small. Okay. I mean, in just like from the point of view of exams, I mean, like it's, I mean, it's that syllabus and all. But then, whenever you wish to achieve something great or something that perhaps the people around you haven't achieved, then you have to become that person. I mean, someone becomes the first while doing something, right? So that to become that first person, you have to dream something big and something unimaginable. I mean, it. I mean, see, matches and exams and all. It can, I like, be sometimes a win or a loss. By win, we may get very good marks in exams, and by loss, we may get less marks in exams. But this win and loss doesn't matter much. I mean, what matters is how many efforts you put, and basically, like how much percent of your energy and yourself do you give. If you are giving your 100%, then that's it. I mean, no one can give beyond his or her 100%, right? So if you are giving your 100%, then you are doing your best. Okay. uh so yeah, I mean, now what's the difference between school and college? So as you can see the animation here, in school the syllabus and the things you have to do is quite less. I mean, the option that perhaps you are given is quite less. I mean, I remember in my school days I had only one or two options of choosing academics. I mean, related to academics. One was related to choosing Hindi, or I mean, one was related to choosing Sanskrit or Marathi in my class six. And then when we came in class ninth, when we had papers coming from CBSE, we had an option of choosing one from Sanskrit, Hindi, or Marathi. So perhaps these were the only two choices that were given to us in terms of academics. So perhaps it's quite streamlined in school till class 10th. Teachers teach you predefined syllabus. They give you a kind of fixed amount of study material that you have to study. Maybe you can just rectify or you can just memorize those things, and then you can also get full marks based on that memorization. But in college, I mean, it's quite different. So the main difference is that in college there is a lot of freedom given to you. I mean, in first year itself the freedom might be less, but as you move on, as you enter your higher study years like second year, third year, and finally fourth year, the freedom that you are given increases a lot. You have to take, I mean, see, first of all, the teachers won't come to you and tell you you have to read this, and then you have to memorize this, and questions will be these. Nothing of that sort is told. What is told is, I mean, the teacher just teaches in the class and just goes on. Now you are left with your own study material, with your own plan of action, how you have to prepare for the final exams, right? So I mean, the one thing is basically you need to plan out how you have to kind of study for the exams. And the other thing is, I mean, you have to plan out what interests you or what is exciting for you, because as you move on, you would be given the option of taking different courses in different domains and different subjects. Like, I mean, you would have the freedom to choose any kind of course. But I mean, over that, I mean, whenever you are given that freedom, you should also know, like, what are the pros of some course, what are the cons of some course, and like what is best for my future. I mean, there might be multiple courses. Suppose you are in, say, suppose you are in computer science branch. Like, yeah, suppose you're in computer science branch, then perhaps a course related to statistics and probability is much more helpful than a course related to biology. So you need to decide upon those factors. I mean, what is more helpful for your future. And it's not necessary that you're in computer science means you have to do software development or something like that. I mean, it's based on your interest. So if you are interested in maths, then perhaps a course related to mathematics is more helpful than biology, than that in biology. Hence, you have to use this freedom responsibly. So I mean, that's very much important. I mean, this is what is required in college. Okay. Now what makes an effective student? Okay. So as you can see, an effective student basically has a regular study schedule. I mean, if you notice this point, you would see that a person who follows his schedule regularly, he's able to manage all the things properly. Because as time progresses, you would have many activities coming over you, and if you don't plan your schedule, I mean, if you don't have that skill of time management, then perhaps things may slip over. I mean, you won't be able to do anything properly. Okay, so that skill of time management, that skill of utilizing your time most efficiently, is something that is very much needed to become successful, perhaps in this tenure of 4 years or 5 years, I mean your college life. Okay, so that is something that is very much important for becoming a good and a successful student. Okay, so that is one thing. The other thing is the methodology with which you study. I mean, see, so people study on, I mean, so I am also in college right now. I see people studying on beds, people study anywhere. That is also fine. I mean, it's completely up to you, but it's seen that if you have that proper defined place, I mean, proper techniques of studying, be it in terms of place, in terms of time, in terms of what I should say, um, motivation, or all these factors, if they are fixed, then perhaps the focus of study and the power of study, I mean, increases, because it's like that one direction where the entire energy is going, right? So that is required. Apart from this, I mean, don't study on a continuous stretch of say 2 to 3 hours. I mean, have that particular small breaks in between long study hours, because that is like refreshing yourself in between long durations of studies. Okay, I mean, most of you might be studying on laptops as of now, so there might be a lot of eye strain while sitting in front of laptop. So small breaks are needed to basically break that period. Even in, I mean, whenever you have offline classes, if you would have seen, there is always a 5 to 10 minute gap between two classes. That is basically to relax yourself, to refresh yourself, to drink water, to just, I mean, to just calm down your body, so that your mind, the mind state basically changes from the content of the previous class to the content of the second class. I mean, that transition should be smooth enough so that you are able to digest and like retain the content of both the courses or both the classes. So hence, I mean, that short periods break are required. Okay. Okay. So the other thing is basically a good student always has some that has a good student always has effective techniques to study. Now, what do I mean by effective? So by effective, I mean that some techniques with which he or she can basically memorize, he or she can basically try to recall that content that was taught earlier quickly. Okay, so basically, how can you do this? I mean, from my personal experience, I have seen that whenever I make notes for some course or for some lecture, then there are basically three advantages. One is that you basically hear, and the other, I mean, so that content is basically being memorized 3 times. One is when you hear from the class, that everyone does. The other is when you write, that is the second time when you are memorizing or when you are recalling the content. And the third time is when you read what you have written. So basically, hearing, writing, and reading. In this way, you are basically coming in touch with the content 3 times, which is quite a lot. And this ensures to a great extent that you are in touch with your content and you have understood the content, right? So these methods of making notes, revising them properly, is something which will like I will not say certainly, but in most of the cases give you success, give you a good confidence that you actually know the content. Okay. The other thing is, I mean, you should not basically leave your work to the end. That's what is another implication of good time management. If you manage your time properly, then you have planned in such a way that like some work is at the end, but then other works are done accordingly. So it's not like everything is pushed at the end and you are just relaxing. No. So a good time management, good time management technique basically ensures that you have your work distributed almost evenly over the whole duration. It's not like you are doing entire the work entirely now, or you are doing the work entirely at the end. It's basically like you're distributing everything in a uniform way, so that there isn't any load at any point of time, neither now or at the end. And this is something which is required. I mean, that consistency, that regularity of your work is something which is required to become very good. Okay. And then, I mean, if you have that good notes, if you have that good proper study schedule, if you have that good time management skills, then that motivation to study, that motivation to kind of that motivation to be uh, that motivation to just touch those books, to just like skim through those pages comes automatically. I mean, if you are given some nice thing, say a good notebook with very beautiful handwriting and very summarized content, then who would not like to read it, right? So that's what is important. I mean, if you have that notes in a very good state, then perhaps like you have that motivation coming from your inner self, that I would like to study, not that I would have to study, right? So that like comes instead of have. Okay. Now, as I was studying, I was talking about time management. Like one application of time management is preparing a good exam study plan. So this depends on, I mean, first of all, listing out. So the way I prepare for exam is basically I first list out the content that is covered in the class. I mean, in broad topics, what all topics are covered in class, what all material is given, and then what I do is I try to allocate a fixed time. I mean, a tentative amount of time for each of those tasks, so that I get a basic idea of how much hours I would need to put in overall for all the exams for the entire content to be summarized and covered. And then what I do is uh, I basically try to fit that study hours in such a way that it is uniformly distributed over the entire number of days. Okay, it's not like I'm doing everything, I'm studying everything from the start, and or I'm studying everything at the end. It's like I have those study hours for each task assigned. I do some task today, I do some task tomorrow, I do some task 2 days afterwards, and I keep on doing those tasks till the end. I mean, till a day before my exam. So in this way, I mean, this pipeline, first of all, summarizing the topics that are taught in the class, then trying to assign the total, like tentative, not total, the tentative number of hours that you would need to give to complete each task or each lecture or say each module or each topic, and then distributing those time schedules in your, I mean, putting those time blocks in your daily schedule properly. That is something that if you master, then perhaps you have mastered the art of preparing. Okay. So, I mean, this is what is required on a daily basis, or I should say on a long basis. Now, this is a famous quote. I mean, if you would realize, I mean, uh, yeah, so the quote says, if you fail to plan, then you are perhaps planning to fail. So, as such, it's just a flip of words. I mean, the fail earlier is pushed to end, and the plan at the end is pushed to the front. But I mean, the meaning is quite deep. Okay. So, what it says is like, I mean, so if you aren't able to plan your life properly, if you aren't able to plan your motivation properly, then perhaps what you are doing is you are doing something which is leading to failure, right? Which would lead to failure. So that means that perhaps you are actually doing something that ends in a failure. That means you are doing something, you are planning something for a failure. So if you fail to plan, then perhaps you are planning to fail. That is the deep meaning of this. Okay. So many people just think it as if it's a kind of debt or it's a kind of burden that perhaps the parents or the college has put on them. But it's not that, it's basically the kind of loads of books, syllabus, content, assignments, and all that is being put on. So you need to recognize the problem properly, and after that, perhaps you can find a solution. Now, I mean, this fact everyone would know. I don't think I would need to iterate over this. The main idea is perhaps first identify the problem. Where exactly does the problem lie? Are you not able to concentrate first? Are you able to concentrate, but you aren't able to understand? Second, you are able to understand, you're able to concentrate, but then these factors come in between. Third, what are these factors? These factors are basically killing your time. I mean, they are kind of distractions, what we say, right? Be it noisy roommates, be it telephone calls, be it surprises, be it internet. I mean, internet, mobile, everything is the biggest distraction in youth as of now. So if you would just sit in a calm and in a quiet place, in a silent place, and just think, like, just try to analyze once. I mean, whenever you are free, the 24 hours that you have, how much time goes in these 12 factors at least? Okay. I mean, these are like, after quite a lot of analysis and lot of observation, these 12 points have been taken out. So perhaps they are something meaningful and they have been experienced by almost all of us at some point of our life. So just try to sit at one calm and quiet place and then try to find out how much time goes in these 12 points. And you would realize that a lot of time, actually a lot of time goes in these 12 points. And that's why perhaps many of us regret that we aren't able to complete our tasks of the day, or perhaps we weren't able to utilize our day to the fullest. The main reason is, I mean, people, so in some cases what happens is people actually plan in the best way. They, like, at the start of the day they plan that I have to do so and so and so and so tasks today, but at the end somehow they are dissatisfied. Why? Because they see that they haven't completed even half of the task, or they haven't completed all the tasks. So the main reason are these points, the time thieves. And I mean, you should try to analyze how much time of your day or of your life goes in these points. And I would try to summarize. I mean, I would try, if you want to give priority to some points, I would give first of all to the fifth point, that is internet, and basically the 10th point, that is regretting and daydreaming. I mean, I personally have experienced that a lot of my time used to go, and still perhaps not that much, but still some of my time goes in internet and say regretting and daydreaming. But then you should try to analyze how much time is perhaps being wasted here. So as you know, you get 86,400 seconds each day. Yeah. So basically now we try to quantitatively analyze or analytically, analyze what different ways are, or what different domains are there where we spend our time. Okay. So one of the thing is basically doing urgent things that demand our immediate attention, and one is doing important things that is not perhaps urgent or maybe urgent, but then something that is important for our future and for our life. Okay. So yeah, I mean, the main, as I summarized earlier, the main points or the main motivation is you have to be clear with your target, you have to be clear with your mission, and you have to create that particular goal that you have to achieve. And to achieve that, I mean, see, clearing your vision is a prerequisite. Without a clear vision, you can't do anything substantial, right? That is first thing. What are you achieving is your mission, and how will you achieve it is the path or the way that you should follow, and that is basically led by time management. Okay. I mean, yeah. So as I had said, many people regret. I need more time. Then I'm in too much stress, and there is a lot of things to, like, there are a lot of things to do. Okay. Uh, yeah. I mean, and if I just a second. Yeah. I mean, like, people just complain and complain and complain, but they don't just. I mean, they don't just solve the problem. That is the thing. Yeah. So that is perhaps the main important thing. Now the other thing is, I mean, distractions are everywhere, right? So a natural question comes to your mind: how to avoid distractions? Okay. Now, if you do nothing, then perhaps it's an idle mind. And there is a famous saying that an idle mind is a devil's workshop. That means that if you keep your mind idle, then perhaps all these negative things, all these bad things would like quickly come to your mind and plunge it. Okay. Now the thing is how to avoid this. For avoiding this, you need to keep your mind busy. You need to do some task or the other, some good task or some productive task or the other. Right? If you notice, like, I mean, whenever you are in an exam or whenever you are in some critical situation, then at that time perhaps there isn't any kind of, I mean, like negative thought or some kind of enjoyment thought that comes. Like, say, like, last 5 minutes of your exam are left, and say you have around 20 marks to cover. Now it's really a tough pressure, right? I mean, the pressurizing situation, right? A tough situation. At this point, like, I haven't seen any person who gets the thought of watching animes or watching TV series or watching YouTube and watching some funny shows. I mean, because at that point, perhaps you have pressure on your mind, and hence your mind is busy. So if you would notice this deeply, and if you would analyze the situation, you would see that whenever the mind is busy, perhaps these bad thoughts or these negative habits don't come to. Hence, what is important is basically keeping yourself busy and doing things on the go. Okay. So as I was telling earlier about urgent and important things. So now what we do is we have this like two axes: urgent, not urgent, and the other is important, not important. Hence we have basically four quadrants. And as we move along, we try to classify every kind of work in these four quadrants. Okay. First is being urgent important, second is not urgent but important, third is urgent but not important, and fourth is not neither urgent nor important. Okay. So let me just check the time once. Yeah, yeah. So now what is basically urgent and important? So urgent and important, uh, I mean, basically it's something that you have to do because it's important and mostly because it's urgent, right? The other thing is basically not urgent but important. You need to plan for it. I mean, if I say urgent and important, a task would be, uh, I mean, writing an exam itself. Like, suppose you have an exam from 9 a.m. and you wake up at 8:30, then writing an exam is urgent as well as important, right? Now, something which is important but not urgent is, I mean, like a father securing money for the future of the family. I mean, it's not like the entire money that he gets today from his salary or from his earnings, he puts the entire money in bank for future in form of like insurance or fixed deposit. But he does it over a period of time. So it's important. It's certainly important because that would like secure the future of his children and his further generations. But it's not very urgent. The next thing is, I mean, urgent but not important. Like you get a phone call in the middle of a class. I mean, it's urgent, right? I mean, the reaction that you give is basically urgent. Either you cut the phone or you take it. So it's urgent, but it's not important, right? I mean, even if you don't take the phone, then there is nothing disaster that is going to happen. And the last category is not urgent and not important. So most of the time that gets wasted comes in this category. Watching Netflix, watching, I mean, TV shows or like doing time pass on YouTube and Instagram and all. So these are the four quadrants that all the works can be divided into. Okay. Now, yeah, I mean, so one thing is basically uh, urgent and important has to be done, and important but not urgent, it has to be planned. Okay. And urgent but not important, you need to delegate with it, you need to negotiate with it. I mean, if it's urgent but not important, then perhaps you can do that work. I mean, you can just try to see if that's actually important. I mean, if that's actually required. If it's not required, then just leave it. And not urgent and not important, you need to neglect this work or you need to just cut it down. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so quadrant one is of action, quadrant two is of quality. I mean, how good you are. Quadrant three is of deception, and quadrant four is of taste. Okay, now this is the triple S formula for time management. I mean, the first is basically shrink Q1 by postponing less. So what is Q1? Quadrant one. Okay, quadrant one is basically urgent and important. Okay. I mean, whatever is to be done now, just do it now and finish it. Say no to Q3 activities. Urgent but not important. Okay. I mean, if it's urgent but not important, then perhaps it's not important. And if it's not important, then perhaps it can be neglected. Okay. I mean, in the sense, it can be just cut out. Okay. So just say no to that. So no to those activities. And then it's slacker activities. Okay. Now, if you would just think about this, then perhaps I mean, the efficient time management lies in spending a lot of time in quadrant two. That is important but not urgent. Because whatever your future activities and long-term goals are, almost 90% of them are being affected by these kind of works, which are important but not urgent. I mean, a lot of work in your life is not urgent, but certainly it is important. Getting a degree from your college is important, though it's not urgent. Being a successful human being is important, though it's not urgent. Then, I mean, living a life independently, uh, what I should say, being that backbone of your family financially, morally is important but not urgent, right? So whatever these activities are, most of the important but not urgent activities decide how your future life is going to be and how you are going to be in this world. Okay. So I mean, these are some of the basic tips. Like, I mean, most of you would have read this, but don't implement it. So, I mean, see, it's not like you are doing some guna, you are doing some pap. I mean, it's a common activity. Like, many of you would just listen to this session, read these points, and then perhaps forget about it after an hour or so after the session ends. I mean, this is what happens in most of the session. But then you would need to realize that perhaps if you want to if you want to move ahead, if you want to be successful, if you want to be something different, something unique from others, something different from others or something unique, then perhaps at some point of time you would have to think on these points. And once you think on these points, it's not very tough to implement this or bring it into your daily life. I mean, investing time where maximum returns can be achieved, keeping your goals in the eye of the mind, concentrate on whatever you are doing, keeping study materials and desk clean, neat, and organized. All these points you most of you would know, but some way or the other, most of you don't follow these. So, for being successful, perhaps then it's quite important that you actually follow these points. Okay, and that would give you an edge, and that would perhaps push you ahead of the others or make you different and unique from them, make you unique. Okay. So there is a saying in Bhagavad Gita. I would just read it. Vyavasayatmika buddhi rekeha kurmandan bhahushaka hanantahascha buddhayo avyavasayinam. That means that bring focus to your duty and try to eliminate distractions and addictions. Okay. So that is something that everyone actually knows and everyone has to do. Okay. The other saying says, Yukta hara viharascha, Yukta cheshtasya karmasu, Yukta swapna babodasya, yogo bhavati dukha. Which means Yukta ahar, Yukta vihar, Yukta cheshta. I mean, appropriate food, appropriate stay, appropriate rest, appropriate work. Okay. All these things are essential to live an ideal life, to live a successful life, to become a successful human being. Giving up wrong association, the biggest threat to life, or perhaps the biggest threat to your own self, inner self, is something that is a very big step to becoming successful and becoming happy. Right? You need to define what your association is. There is a famous quote, or perhaps a famous saying, which says that a person is the average of the 5 people that he stays around over 5 years. Okay, or he is an average of the 5 most frequently people that he's most he is an average of the 5 people that he stays the most with. Okay, so whatever your association is, it defines you. If your association is good, you would be good. If your association is bad, you would be bad. It's as if those energies are being radiated and transmitted to you. So if you stay among bad energy, you would, even if you don't wish, you would have that bad energy coming into you. So that is something that you should try to focus upon. Okay. So this is the kind of definition of smart. It means S means specific, M means measurable, A means achievable, R means relevant, and T means time bound. Okay. Yeah. So these are other study topics as such. When to study, how to study, that completely depends on you. But it's seen that, personally, I have experienced that if I wake up early in the morning, say around 7 or 8 o'clock, and when I start my day at 8:30, then perhaps the day seems to be longer enough. It's long enough. It seems to be longer. And when it seems to be longer, you have that motivation that you can do a lot of work, and you actually do a lot of work. You become more productive when you wake up. That is something that you should just keep in mind. It's always better that you wake up early and sleep early. Early in the sense at least 11 or 12, but that's fine. But if you wake up at around 7 or 8, perhaps that is something that is always good. If you wake up early, also it's very good. But 7 or 8 is a kind of time that I personally wake up and I feel that it's actually very good time. Okay. And consistency and regularity is something which is required. Whatever work you do, you should do it daily. You plan it such a way that there is not, the load is distributed uniformly. It isn't that a lot of work is being done to be done today and then tomorrow there is no work, or today there is no work and tomorrow there is a lot of work. Today there should be around half work, tomorrow there should be around half work, so that it's distributed uniformly. And as you can see, we discussed that we need to have definite breaks between, and we need to avoid late hours. We should sleep early as soon as possible. And then after a big mountain is climbed up, or after a big landmark or a milestone is achieved, you need to be relaxing. It's not that you need to be working and working and working every time, because even machines need relaxation. Even machines need rest. Every machine or every organism in the in this universe needs some rest or some relaxation, so that the efficiency whenever he or she works again or it works again is more. If you just keep on working, then perhaps your efficiency would keep on decreasing and decreasing and decreasing. That is something that should not happen. I mean, if you have achieved some tasks, if you have given your exam, then just relax for a few times, for a time. I mean, say for a few days or so. Just relax, keep your mind calm, keep it away from those academic load, etc. So that whenever it comes back, when it bounces back again higher, it has that rejuvenating energy, so that whenever it enters the field again, it plays fours and six every time, and it like it just smashes over everything. Now, yeah, where to study? I mean, so these are some of the ideal factors that you perhaps would know. I mean, it should be a good place where there is sufficient light, there is sufficient air flowing around. I mean, the environment is proper, it's motivational, perhaps there is water to drink around you, and it's away from distractions. Okay. So, I mean, this is also what we have talked about. There shouldn't be any distraction when you are studying. Try to, keep your phone in silent mode so that it does not disturb you. Perhaps try to keep all your electronic gadgets away from you so that they don't disturb you. And keep a notebook with you, a pen, pencil with you, so that whenever you require it, you can use them. And be be controlling over your mind. Try to control your mind. Whenever there are some negative thoughts, try to just suppress them. Suppress in the sense, try to just ignore them. Try to do something that interests you, but is not very bad or very addictive as such. Yeah, and I mean the motivation or the inspiration, the dedication that you have towards your goal should be there every time, right? It should not be the case that after doing it for say 1 or 2 days your motivation comes down. I mean, if it's a real motivation, then perhaps that motivation will stay long enough, right? And that is what should be the case. Okay. Now, what to do during your exam? Okay, so I would just talk. I mean, I would just give you some, like, I would tell you what essential points are there in this topic. So, whenever you start writing an exam, first thing is your mind should be calm, cool, focused, and composed. It should not be the case that suppose some questions you get, like you read first, like first 2 or 3 questions you read are very easy, then your mind becomes agitated, over happy, and then you become more confident. This shouldn't be the case. Also, the case shouldn't be that if the first 2 or 3 questions are very tough, then you perhaps you become distressed, you become depressed, you take tension, and then even the easy questions that come afterwards, you make them wrong. I mean, you shouldn't be overconfident enough, or you shouldn't be depressed. You should be in a calm and composed state. Take each question as a particular unit. Solve the paper question by question, bit by bit. If the first bit is solved, it's done, be it wrong or right. But the thing is, if it's solved, then it's done. And then when you move to the next question, complete it as an individual entity. Complete, like consider it as an individual entity. Whatever be the answer to this question, so whatever be the result of the previous question should not impact the answer to this question, or the way you solve this question, or the way you look at this question. If the 5 questions that you have done earlier, the first, I mean, the last five, the previous 5 questions, the most recent 5 questions, if they are quite easy, then this can also be a tough. I mean, this can be a tough question. It's not that this will also be easy. So look at it through new. I mean, I should say through its own lens, not through the lens of the previous questions. Okay. I mean, don't assume anything. Don't create biases. Treat each question as if you are seeing a new ball. I mean, treat each question as if you are seeing a new question. Like in the, I mean, if you compare this to cricket, then perhaps the great players are those which consider every ball that comes to them as a new ball. So if the first 5 balls of the over are quite easy, it does not mean that the last ball will also be easy. Okay. Hence, consider every question as a different unit and solve it independently, irrespective of whatever is the result for the previous questions. Okay. Now, when you read the question, what is important is the first thought that comes to your mind. I mean, the way you have to answer it depends on the question. If it's what, then you have to write I mean, the description of the question. If it's why, then you have to give reason for the question. If it's how, then you have to describe some procedure. If you have to find some number, then you have to do some calculation. So the WH word of the question, that the WH word in the question determines how you have to basically solve the question. Okay. And I mean, so the way an ideal answer should be is, first of all, you should take some time to think like how I should formulate the question. And once you are ready with that plan or that structure, then perhaps just fill in the content. Okay, directly writing lame content and blunt content won't fetch you very much marks, or won't fetch you good marks. There is a yeah, I mean, a plan basically gives you to gives rise to a logical and well structured answer. Okay, so there is a famous saying that says, if I had 6 hours to cut a tree, I would spend the first 5 hours sharpening my axe, and only the last 1 hour cutting the tree. If I directly start cutting the tree, perhaps I would take much longer time. Okay. But in the 6 hours, if I spend a lot of time sharpening my axe, in the same way, if I spend a lot of time thinking about the structure of the answer, thinking about what all content I need to put, developing that flow, developing that perceptions, and developing that whole idea in my mind for the major part of my time that have been allocated for this question, then perhaps writing an answer is not a big deal. The major task is the way you think and what all ideas come to your mind. Okay, I mean, yeah, so if you have that concise logical thinking, then perhaps presenting is not a very big problem. And even like the answers that you write reflect your thought process. A concise answer, a proper answer reflects that the student has thought a lot, I mean thought smartly on this question, and hence they are generally good presented, and examiner likes answers that are good presented, and hence he gives the marks. Okay, so I mean, specifications are that a question should have an introduction, I mean answer should have an introduction, a middle part, and a proper conclusion. The other thing that I used to ensure, and that perhaps you also ensure, is that don't just write big paragraphs in your answers. Try to write your answers in terms of points. Say bullet point one, point two, point three, so that it's easy to grade for the examiner. I mean, it's easy to like quantize your answers. If you just write one big paragraph, he may perhaps not know where to give marks, where not to give marks. But if you write points, then perhaps it is easier for him to like count those number of points, or like he has something to count, right? And he has that something to give marks, right? So if you have say 5 points and if the question is of 5 marks, then I mean easily he can give 1 mark to each point. And I mean, the examiner likes to read such answers. It's not that examiner just does it in pressure, right? So if he or she likes to read that answer, then perhaps that positive bias is created for you. Okay. And what is more important, I mean what is also important, perhaps if not more, is that you should have that good grammar, you should have that good punctuation, handwriting, and spelling. If grammar is bad, then perhaps there is irritation or frustration while reading the sentence, and the natural flow of English breaks down. And then I mean, if the grammar is bad, then perhaps that natural flow doesn't maintain for very long. Same is with punctuation, and handwriting and spelling are something which should be good, so that the examiner basically has that visual liking for your answers. Okay. And in questions that involve numbers and computing some values, then try to do it with method, try to do it like with procedure, so that you get like even if you get the final answer wrong due to some calculation mistake in between, you have that mark for the method that you have used. I mean, see, the one thing is, whenever you write an answer, try to put whatever knowledge you have relevant to that question into your answer. You may never know where you can get marks, right? So as I can said, as I said, use the listing technique, and perhaps when you have to draw something, use label diagrams. Always label, because the examiner does not know what you have drawn. So whatever you draw, just label it with your content. Okay. Uh, yeah. So basically answering the question and nothing but the question. Just focus on the question, and try to just complete it with your answers. Okay. Read the question slowly, deliberately, and carefully, realizing that every word is important, because most of the mistakes are made while reading the question. If the question is not read properly, then half of the battle is already lost. And if the question is read properly, then half of the battle is already won. Okay. So read the question properly, think what you have to write. I mean, think what is divided in the question and what you have to write. Okay. Uh, yeah, just a minute. I'll be back. Yeah, sorry for it, but yeah, I mean, so this is a kind of impact. I mean, see, you can consider the answer sheet that you would submit as a kind of medium of communication between you and the examiner. Whatever, it's like a chitti, it's like a like a letter that you just send it to your examiner. Whatever content you write, it is basically being sent to examiner to read, and that content will give, like, that content basically is a representative of you in front of the exam. Okay, so whatever content you write, basically it would represent your thought process, your personality, and perhaps you in front of the exam. Okay, so if you answer all the questions, then perhaps examiner would just evaluate you. Since the examiner hasn't seen you and doesn't know you, he would just evaluate you based on your answers that are being scripted or that are being inscribed on those sheets. Okay, so yeah, so basically answering all the questions basically shows that you know the syllabus to a great extent, and perhaps the way you detail your answers show the depth you have on those topics, and the way you structure your answers shows the elegance and the and what I should say, I mean, the proper management, or I should say the proper structure that your life that you live your life with. I mean, a haphazard answer means that your life is quite jumbled and scrambled, and a haphazard answer means that you aren't well organized and you aren't a very good. You aren't a very well organized person. But structured answer means that you are calm and a composed person. You have that proper structure and that proper, uh, what I should say, discipline in yourself. Okay. I mean, yeah. So this is another important point, leaving space at the end of the answers so that in case you have any more ideas coming to you after some time, then perhaps you can write. Because in most of the cases, what happens is you start writing an answer and you get, I mean, say you have written around 80% of the answer, but uh, after writing that 80%, perhaps you feel that there is still some point that I have to write, but I'm not getting it now. That point isn't clicking me in my mind, that point isn't clicking in my mind now. So what you can do is you can perhaps leave some space, and then whenever that point clicks, you can just write it down. Okay, and just to maintain a good representation of your entire question paper, start each answer on a new fresh sheet. Okay, a new sheet or a fresh sheet. This ensures that, at the end, when time is less, you are also clear with the flow of the questions, what is written on each page of the question, and I mean, it's well organized. Basically, it's well structured. It's well organized, and it's that you have that proper content written. You have that flow maintained, and basically, uh, see, the thing is, whenever something is well organized, it's always easy to search and look for. Okay, and when you start your answer on each new sheet or each fresh sheet, then perhaps at the end, when you have to write something, you need not search it much. If it's well structured, if it's like distributed in a proper way, if it's segregated in a proper way, then perhaps it's easier to find, right? And yeah, this is something that many of us might have done in our school life. When we don't know anything, we just keep faking. Like, we just keep writing something which is irrelevant. The main motivation for this is that our answer should be big enough. The teacher gives the marks based on the size of the answer rather than the content in school days, and hence we just succeed with these methods. But these methods don't work in college. I have personally experienced this. In my first and second years, I used to write long answers, and I used to think that, similar to my school days, these teachers would also see the size of the answers and they would give me marks. But in college, this doesn't happen, unfortunately. And in college, what happens is they read your answers. And if they find something irrelevant or illogical or something that is not related to the question that is being asked, then they might deduct your marks. Okay. So if you don't do anything, that's fine. That's fine in the sense that you may leave it blank. It's not embarrassing or something. But writing something which is irrelevant, something which is completely absurd, might lead to some negative marks for you. Okay. So, examiners are in that mode of that particular question, in that zone of that question. So, only if they find some relevant facts or pertinent facts to that question, facts pertaining to that question or theory pertaining to that question, then only they would give you marks and they would appreciate it. Okay. Otherwise, if they find something which is like just blunt or something which is, I mean, does not have any importance for a question, they would just, I mean, that would make them irritated or frustrated, and this frustration might cause a negative impact on your future question that he or she would write. And writing like tautological statements like accrued expenses or expenses which are accrued. uh, I mean, air pollution is pollution which is caused in air. I mean, something like that, which is, it does not have that scientific theory, or something which does not have any science behind it, is also useless in such questions. And like learn in the best possible way. And the main motto is again pleasing the examiner. Okay. Okay. So yeah, as we discussed earlier, it basically depends on what you answer and how you answer. Why you answer is because you want marks. So why you answer? Because you want. Now, what you answer basically depends on the question what it is asking, and how you answer depends on your own methodology. So if what you answer is correct, it's like 70% of the battle you have won. And perhaps how you answer, if it's good, the method is nice, then perhaps 100% of the battle you won. Most people, like when they know what to answer but they don't know how to answer, they lose some marks because it's not well structured, it's not properly organized. But a person who knows what and how is successful. And like some of the visual effects that you would like to create to make the exam, make the answer sheet a very good sheet, is basically your ink should be, I mean, the way the answer that you write should be bold, it should appeal, I mean, the visual impact that these answers create should appeal to the user, I mean to the examiner. And so for this, it's like it should be visually pleasing to the eye. It should not be the case that user has to, I mean, the examiner has to struggle to read your answers. He has to put a lot of energy and efforts to read your answers, he or she. Hence, the ink should be black and sharply pointed. The type should be large enough to read, and writing some headings, subheadings, subtopics, etc., bullet points, numbered points, underlining the middle, I mean, the important conclusions in the answers, and boxing the final answers, like making a box in the at the final answer. These are kind of small things, but very important, because if these are there, then perhaps whenever you read your own answer sheet, you would feel, "Arey, I mean, this is really nice. This is something that I should be proud of," and that would make you more confident. Okay. So as I mentioned, I mean, if you help the examiner to check your paper in an easy way, that's always good, because examiners already have a lot of stress. Perhaps the environment might not be good. Perhaps many of them would have had a fight at their home, maybe with their children or with their wife or with their husband, and that frustration might come on your paper. So to ensure that doesn't happen, just keep your answer sheets in a visually appealing mode. Okay. Yeah, like first impression is the last impression. The opening page of your answer, I mean, the answer book should be of a question which you are quite confident of, and which you have written in a visually appealing way, with good ink, with bold words, with dark words, and with dark ink. Okay, good ink, dark ink, bold words, etc. Yeah, and I mean, these are quite kind of summaries. And yeah, I mean, use short sentences, not very long, because the span of reading a sentence is quite small for a human being. I mean, say after 7 to 8 words, perhaps a person is not able to retain the earlier words, and hence try to use short sentences, smaller paragraphs. And I mean, never appeal to the examiner. What this means is not the appeal that we are talking about. This appeal means the request that you make to examiner. I mean, please give me marks, please give me marks. This should not be done at any cost. Okay, it's not like that you are a beggar. I mean, you should get marks based on your own motivation and based on your own knowledge, not that you beg for the marks. So these are the different spokes of our life wheel of life: physical, spiritual, mental, friends, family, financial. A good person and ideal person is one who balances all of these six spokes in a proper way. Okay. And I mean, each and every nanosecond values, I should say, each and every nanosecond counts a lot. Okay. So basic four needs of human life: to live, to love, to learn, to leave a legacy. To live is our physical need, to love is our social need, to learn is our mental need, so that we are mentally satisfied, and to leave a legacy is our spiritual need. Basically understanding why we have been born, and what is the purpose of life. why do we live? I mean, that is something that if we know, then we are done. Okay. So there is a famous quote which goes like this: the two most important days of your life are, first, the day you are born, and second, the day you find out why. So the day you are born is perhaps gone for all of you. The day you find out why you are born, that is something, if you find out, then perhaps your life has become successful. So this is something that perhaps you would relate to yourself. So first, I mean, I was dying to finish high school and start college. Then I was dying to finish college and start working. And then I was dying to marry and have children. And then I was dying for my children to go old enough for school. And then I was dying to retire. And now what? Suddenly I realized that I forgot to. So every time I am just dying, I am not living any time. So you need to live your life, live it to the fullest, enjoy it to the fullest, but at the same time, be sure about the purpose of your life. Okay. So meaningful in life is not some simply breathing exercise, not simply like making a living. I mean, it's something more than this. These all activities are being also done by animals as well, right? But you basically need to give a purpose to your life. Okay. Do believe in, I mean, yeah, so give your 100%. If you love to believe in someone, believe in him or her, believe in God. Whatever gives you strength, whatever gives you confidence, just believe in it. But belief should be there in something, or maybe in some personality, right? And I would just end with this famous shlok from Bhagavad Gita: तस्मात् सर्वेषु कालेषु मामनुस्मर युद्ध च मया अर्पित मनोबुद्धिर मामे वैश्य संशय. Just remember me, and like Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, just remember me and fight. Don't care about win or loss. Don't care about victory or defeat. Don't care about happiness or distress. Just remember me. Just think about your duty and leave the rest to me. Okay. So karma karte ja, pal ki chinta mat kar. That is something that is the message of Bhagavad Gita. So with this, we end, and all the very best to your exam. So if any one of you has any doubts or questions or any queries or any concerns, feel free to ask.
Thank you very much, sir. The session was very practical and very relevant, and I'm sure it will help us all performing well in our exams, especially your description of time management matrix. Uh, so, in the time management matrix, you explained the importance of quadrant two. So, your quote on if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. It was so. Thank you very much, sir. We look forward to your association in our and guys, if you have any questions, we can take couple of.
I think Rushtita has some question. Share with them.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, what's the better way to read entire chapter at a glimpse and read a certain portion in depth?
So I would, I mean, it depends again on the level at which the questions are being asked. If the chapter is not so important, then perhaps you can read the whole chapter at once. But if it's something that carries a lot of weightage in your syllabus, then perhaps you should reach each of its topic that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think all the doubts of our students were cleared. So, due to your upcoming end semester examinations, our STW and PDW session resume from 9th April. So, all the best for your exams. And Attendance link will be shared to you. Yeah, I think it is shared in chat box. Uh, we'll resume the meeting for 5 minutes. So attendance. Yeah, you click the link and mark your attendance. Take care and meet you all on 9th April.